Ben Perrin, please come out. He's going to walk us through the Technology 101.
I am petrified to follow Jack, but I will do my best. And so Jack is amazing when it comes to coming out here and telling you the why of Bitcoin, and that's really important. But you know what's also very important is actually taking action after learning why Bitcoin is so important, learning the how. And so that's what this presentation is. It is, how do you actually take action and use Bitcoin and become self-sovereign? So we're going to be tackling that this morning. So who is this presentation for? This is an odd one because everybody is at a different point in their learning journey. What I'm going to say is that the entirety of this presentation isn't for anyone, but parts of this presentation are for every person in this room, in this stadium, I suppose. What we're going to be doing is I want you, as an observer, to follow through with this presentation, and I want you to see where you are in your learning journey. And I want you to zero in on what you've understood, and then when you get to the part where I lose you, that's your homework. That's the part where you say, this is the next thing that I tackle. So you don't need to know everything in this presentation, but I want you to take whatever the next step is for you individually. At the end of this presentation, there's going to be a QR code up on the screens here. That QR code will lead you to a list of video playlist of step-by-step tutorials on literally everything I cover on this stage today. You can go to that playlist and you can spend the next year on it and level up like nobody else. So that's the goal here. I encourage you to take pictures, to take notes, to do everything that you can to help yourself level up with this presentation today. So, Bitcoin is about sovereignty. It's many things to many people, but in some form, it's going to give you some type of sovereignty. And that might be from bad monetary policy. It might be from legacy financial gatekeepers. It might be from motivated thieves or tyrannical regimes, or with the right tools, even from infringements on your privacy. So what are the latest tools that you can begin utilizing today to obtain, use, and secure Bitcoin in a self-sovereign way? The goal here isn't to be perfect, but it is to learn and improve gradually, one step at a time, using the tools that best suit your individual goals. So it is time to level up. So here's a little overview of what we're going to be doing. This is you at the end of the presentation, by the way. So this is where we're headed. We're going to make yourself as sovereign of a Bitcoiner as possible. And you can attack this from many different angles. But these are a few of the areas you may want to dabble in. Number one is obtaining Bitcoin. And many of you obviously have Bitcoin here, but a lot of you have probably obtained it through KYC'd exchanges where you have to give up your personal identification to do so. That is fine, but you may also want to explore how to obtain Bitcoin without having to do that. You may want a little nest egg that is just known by you, and there's a lot of reasons you might want to do that. So we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about holding Bitcoin in a non-custodial way, holding it in a self-sovereign way where you control the keys to your money. Also securing Bitcoin with hardware. What is that? How do you do that? Verifying Bitcoin by running a node. A lot of people have heard the term running a node. I saw a ton of hands. Can you show me the hands that are running a node in this audience right now? Damn. Look, if somebody beside you just put up their hand, you should pat them on the back. Good for you guys. That's amazing. Also, remaining private by using the privacy tools out there. CoinJoin, UTXO management, new systems like Xiaomi and eCash on top of Bitcoin, which is something very new that many of you may not have tried. Also, we're going to be touching on using Bitcoin day to day. on-chain transactions may be prohibitively expensive at times, and we're leading to a place where on-chain transactions, you actually have to think about, am I being efficient in how I use the Bitcoin blockchain? And so things like Lightning, Liquid, eCash, Fedimints, these are things coming down the line that you may be using more and more day to day if you're living on a Bitcoin standard eventually. Also spending Bitcoin, and what I mean by that is building those circular economies, building your local communities so that you can do so, and what things can kind of fill those gaps when that falls short. And then also locking down your Bitcoin for long-term savings, not just for yourself, but for your family, for your grandchildren, and for future generations. So, let's dive in. Let's chat not just obtaining Bitcoin, but obtaining non-KYC, or Know Your Customer, coins. Getting some private Bitcoin that just you know about. It goes without saying that leaving coins on an exchange is a bad practice. You don't want that counterparty risk. You don't want leaving your money with somebody else, not your keys, not your coins. That's a common saying. But what about using exchanges at all? If you are concerned about data on your holdings falling into malicious hands, and that could be government or otherwise, you may want to consider using non-KYC methods to obtain at least a portion of your Bitcoin, and perhaps having buckets of risk in how you do that. So some good examples of how to obtain non-KYC Bitcoin. We have HODL HODL. We have tools like Bisq and RoboSats and Peach. These are all more or less peer-to-peer ways in which online you can link up with people, send them payments, and use whatever means necessary. So you can send a payment via a traditional payment rail, but it's not linked directly to a honeypot of information that stores the information, oh, so-and-so bought Bitcoin on this date. No, it's just you sent somebody money. There's no explicit purpose to it stated in a database somewhere. Some other options, of course, local meetups, peer-to-peer for cash. What a fantastic way to obtain Bitcoin. You can mine, although prohibitively expensive if you have expensive power. But if, I don't know, I'm from Canada, so I need extra heat. So we've got our space heaters humming away, getting us some KYC-free sats. I don't know how much that pertains to Madeira, but you know, if you live somewhere cold and you made your way in, that might be a good option for you, getting a little space heater. And even if you're just kind of breaking even, or you're getting paid back a little bit for the expense of the electricity to use that you would have used on heating anyways, it's not a bad way to stack a few extra sats. And finally, what I think should be the most obvious way of obtaining Bitcoin, but sadly is not, is earning Bitcoin for what you already do. Every person here has a job. Every person here has a skill, a service, perhaps a business. Every person here has at least begun to recognize that Bitcoin is better money. Why in the hell would you not ask for it for the skills that you already have? Why would you not accept it? So if you're not doing that already, you should. And you should make it known. You shouldn't just kind of put it to the wayside, but you should make it your mission to state, hey, I'm happy to accept Bitcoin, because if you build it, they will come. Now, in regards to some of these services, these non-KYC peer-to-peer options, there's people here from all over the world, and some of these services can be restricted based on location. But what I'll say is they are indeed available in various places now. So do with that what you will. Let's move on. Let's chat self-custodial wallets. One of the first things you're going to do once you obtain Bitcoin is you're going to want to learn, how do you self-custody it? How do you even get a wallet? And what are you going to use? There's a lot of great options out there these days when it comes to either mobile or desktop. And you're probably going to be using a combo of both. They do vary in user experience. Some are more advanced, some are more simplistic, and some kind of hide the advanced features in the background. But some of the features you may want to look for is, one, the ability to manage multiple accounts, not just a singular balance. Tools in and around fee management, as on-chain fees can kind of fluctuate and you need to be privy to that. Perhaps support for hardware wallets. Perhaps some privacy controls baked in are always useful. The ability to have both hot and cold wallets simultaneously on a single interface, so that you have something for spending and something for saving. Some of the examples on the screen here are some of the ones that I use most frequently. Sparrow Wallet is, I cannot say enough good things about it, and on the surface, it looks scary. But if you've gotten to the point where you know how to set up a basic wallet, write down some words as a backup and recover, you know what a send and a receive button is, you're familiar with a QR code, you can start by focusing on just those things and ignoring the bells and whistles. But then as you begin using the wallet more and more, every once in a while ask a question. What's this little extra feature right here? And the medium becomes the teacher. I think that's one of the coolest things about it. So if you haven't tried Sparrow Wallet on desktop, I encourage you to try it. And a lot of you may not realize, if you're using a hardware wallet with its own software, you can actually, in tandem, try it out with Sparrow Wallet at the same time without having to get rid of the other one. So maybe you're using like a Trezor or something with their Trezor suite. You can pop it over into Sparrow and try it there, and just see what it looks like with a different interface. And if you don't like it, you can go back. But I encourage you to try. Some of the other ones for mobile that I have up on the screen here, one is Nunchuck. I love these guys. They've got a spot near and dear to my heart. They were very helpful in Canada a couple years back, and they build an excellent, excellent software wallet. Also, Blockstream Green is one I've been using even more lately, and the good old default for a lot of people is Blue Wallet, and I do think it works incredibly well. Let's chat hardware. Okay, so obviously getting your non-KYC sats into your own custody is fantastic, but once you start building up a little bit of a balance, you're going to want to secure your Bitcoin, and you're going to probably want to do it with hardware, especially for long-term holding. Most devices, like the one shown here, are going to do the trick. And it really comes down to your personal preferences and what works best for you. Anything is better than nothing. So try not to get analysis paralysis and just sit and not take action. So let's just talk about a few of the things you might want to consider when you're deciding on what hardware to use. So number one, do you as an individual like the interface? Is this easy for you? Do you like how it's done? Does it have all the features that you need? You know, how are the buttons placed on the device? What's the screen like? Just, do you like it? Number two, is it open source? I think that's an important thing, AKA, can you audit the code, or at least can anyone audit the code, even if it's not you having that skill personally? Are there eyeballs on it? That's another thing to consider. Number three, does it have a secure element? This is a chip that holds the keys to your money, and it's segregated from the rest of the device. So that's an important feature that some people, it may be make or break decision if it has one of those. Is it Bitcoin only, or does it have that option for the firmware? Why Bitcoin only? Well, a couple reasons. One I'll say is there's an opportunity cost when your wallet vendor is spending a lot of man hours on supporting every single token under the sun and constantly working to keep up with 8,000 different blockchains and proof of stake Solana shit that you heard in the last presentation. There's an opportunity cost to that. So you're probably not getting the best Bitcoin experience if they're focusing on all of that. But then secondly, with greater complexity comes greater attack vectors, since you may be opening yourself up to stuff that you don't want to if you have a wallet vendor that is busy supporting a million shitcoins when they should be focusing on your Bitcoin security. Now, a few other things here you might want to consider. Can the device be used without having to use proprietary software? Or does it at least have the option to do that after setup? So certain devices here, you may receive it and right away you've got to use their app to set up the device. And then if you don't want to use the app afterwards, you can migrate. Other devices, there is no default app that you use, and out the gate you get to choose your interface that you're going to use with it. So that could be also something to consider for you. Last couple things. Can you do things like hidden wallets with the passphrase, decoy wallets using pins to get to different accounts so that if you're under duress, it leads to a smaller separate balance? There's a lot of different cool features that you can get from a lot of these different wallets, and it's up to you to kind of decide what's important to you and is it useful. Let's move on from there. So, I mean, what we've covered so far, what we've touched on so far, I'd say are going to be your key tenets. How do you get Bitcoin? How do you self-custody first with a hot wallet? And then what hardware are you going to use? If you get to that point, you're already killing it. But let's go a little bit further. I've been living on a Bitcoin standard since 2020. So 4 years now I've been living on Bitcoin. I'd say 90 to 95% of my income is Bitcoin. I pay my bills with Bitcoin. I do everything with Bitcoin. And it's ever changing. I'm not saying that I don't jump through hoops to do it, and if it wasn't for the ideological drive to, one, preserve the fruits of my labor, but also just my aversion to dollars and fiat, you know, there's a number of things that come into play there. But you do have to also consider, how are you using Bitcoin efficiently for those day-to-day transactions? When we've seen fee spikes earlier this year, I'm doing multiple transactions a day, 3, 4, 5, and if an on-chain fee is going to cost me $50 on certain days, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is where certain mechanisms can help you in and around that. So Lightning Network, of course, continues to grow. It allows for cheap and instant payments. It allows for some sender-side privacy improvements. Self-custodial mobile Lightning wallets have come a long way. There's some incredible options. You can see a few of them on the screen here. Phoenix, Mutiny, Breeze, Zeus, all of these you can basically start up on your phone. You've got a mini Lightning node just running on your phone. And that is a massive improvement from having to plug and play and set it all up and manage channels. There is a bit of a trade-off when initially getting onboarded, because you are going to be doing some on-chain transactions to get what are called Lightning channels. It is automated for you now, so there's less to consider there, but there is going to be the occasional on-chain fee when dealing with it, in exchange for not having to rely on third parties to hold any funds for you. Now, Liquid is something that we've seen a little bit more of as of late, and it's not for everybody. There's depending on how purist you are, but it does allow for faster and cheaper transactions. It does add some privacy in terms of shielding the amount that is being sent across the network. Unlike on-chain Bitcoin, you can always see what's being sent. There's some privacy in and around that. Some wallets like Aqua, which just recently came out, they've kind of made payments of Lightning and Liquid seamless, so that if you receive a Lightning payment or you receive a Liquid payment, it's just one unified balance. And as a user, you don't really need to think too much about what is happening. You can just kind of use the wallet and go. There are some trust trade-offs that are beyond the scope of this talk, but I encourage you to at least peek at it and then make your own decisions around it. And then finally, of course, there's a lot of people that do get onboarded through custodial Lightning wallets. And if you're doing tiny transactions of, you know, a few hundred sats and playing around, you know, you're all adults and you can make those decisions. There are examples like Blink and Alby and Wallet of Satoshi and CoinOS and others. They are obviously going to be the cheapest and easiest to set up for that initial transaction and that initial foray into Bitcoin. But you are surrendering custody to a third party, and it's important to be cognizant of that when you're making those decisions. So at the end of the day, if you're using Bitcoin regularly, you've got to consider risk of everything that you're using, and then use the tool that is best suited for the amount of money you're using and for your own personal risk appetite. Now, in the realm of using Bitcoin day to day, I did want to touch on, of course, creating circular Bitcoin economies. There's many ways to begin living on a Bitcoin standard if you do want to start heading down that road as I have. Some examples of websites and initiatives that you can use to remove yourself from the fiat economy that can help bridge those gaps for you. Bitrefill, Bitcoin Company, coin cards, these are places where you can get gift cards for more or less anything that you need, and you can pay with Bitcoin via Lightning. You can also find local merchants through a variety of different apps. Orange Pill app, btcmap.org, satmap.app. These are all different places that you can go to find local merchants or online merchants, or, as I alluded to earlier, list yourself there. And then I think the most important thing you can do is that you can go to your local meetups and that you can start initiatives yourself. And what I've done at home is, we'll say, sort of selfishly, I go to my meetup regularly, and at the beginning of the meetup, I've now started going up in front of everybody and saying, hey, I'm looking for the following thing, and I want to be able to pay in Bitcoin. Does anybody here do this or offer this? And you'd be surprised in a room of Bitcoiners that already have jobs and already have businesses and offer services, how often you'll find somebody, and if you don't find them in that room, through a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of way, I guarantee you someone in the room is going to know somebody that does that thing. And even if they're not a Bitcoiner yet, guess what the next topic of conversation is going to be? Hey, I was at the Bitcoin meetup the other day. Somebody wanted a haircut, and they wanted to pay in Bitcoin. And the barber down the street goes, And they may not bite initially, but that's going to spark some curiosity. And you may just have a barber soon enough. Yeah, start those local initiatives. We built something in my home city of Calgary called the Saturday Market. Inside of 3 weeks, we managed to round up, just through the tactic that I mentioned, 35 local merchants to come together to create a local market. Again, inside of a few weeks, just based on the Bitcoiners in town. So a lot can happen very quickly if you hit the pavement and you actually begin asking. If you don't ask, nothing will happen. So if not you, then who? And side note, you guys are doing great so far. If you go on btcmap.org and check out Madeira, there's a ton of merchants. I was very pleasantly surprised touching down here. What I'm going to say to everybody in this room, if you have a business here locally, even if it's not locally, even if it's back home, go on btcmap.org tonight and list yourself. And then figure out, how am I going to accept Bitcoin? If you build it, they will come. But I'm excited for the next time I'm here and I get to show this map and it's filled in like 3 times as much. All right. Let's put together free speech and freedom money. Another good way to begin building a strong Bitcoin community is through Nostr. And this is a new form of permissionless and censorship-resistant social media. Bitcoin Lightning transactions are natively baked into a lot of the clients, and instead of liking posts, you actually zap people tiny Bitcoin transactions and give them little tips. If you have not tried Nostr yet, I highly encourage you check out something called Primal. It's probably the easiest initial onboarding to this that you can do. You can set it up in a couple minutes, and it has a Bitcoin wallet baked into the app. And furthermore, if you want to top it up with a few sats, you can hit buy Bitcoin in the app, and it defaults to a small amount, a few dollars or a few euros, but it tops you up with sats, and then you can start tipping people instantly and receiving tips for any of your posts that you put on Nostr. So I highly encourage you check it out. If you're looking for alternatives to Primal, you could also check out Damus on iPhone and Amethyst on Android. Both of those are super awesome as well. But nonetheless, start poking around. Nostr is a really cool tool, and it's very early days, and a lot is happening. Let's, now we're getting a bit further into the weeds. Let's chat some privacy tools. So it's very likely that a lot of you have already obtained some KYC Bitcoin. So there's, some degree of record of you owning Bitcoin. Also, you're here, so I took pictures of all of you. No, I did not. But you do need to know that there are some privacy implications to having done that. Furthermore, whenever you use Bitcoin on chain, and somebody knows your identity in doing so, them or other third parties, they can begin to paint a picture of how much Bitcoin that you own. So, if that's a concern of yours, you can use various tools to help preserve your privacy. You may want to explore things like CoinJoin, perhaps coin control, also known as UTXO management. And then you may want to dabble in a few other types of tools. I mentioned earlier something about eCash. There's a couple cool wallets where you can play around with that. You can also check out, to a lesser degree I alluded to, Lightning has some sender-side privacy benefits. Liquid has some amount-based privacy benefits, but they're not perfect. Okay? These tools, they do all have varying degrees of privacy with various trade-offs. It's a spectrum. It's very difficult to be perfect, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good, and start trying out some of these tools today. Some of the stuff on the screen here, of course, one form of CoinJoin is Whirlpool. You can do that through Samurai Wallet on mobile. It's also baked into Sparrow Wallet on desktop. Other forms of CoinJoin include things like Wasabi Wallet, Join Market. In terms of eCash, I would encourage you guys to check out eNuts Wallet, and Minibits is another cool one. And then, again, finally, when it comes to Lightning and Liquid, you guys can play around with some of the previously mentioned stuff. All right, let's chat nodes. I'm preaching the choir here. Half the audience is running a node already, but bear with me. We'll fill everybody else in here. A full node, what is that? It's simply you running a copy of the Bitcoin software, which hosts the entire history of Bitcoin's transactions, as well as a copy of the rules that govern the network. If you are not running a node, you are trusting someone else to do it for you. And so, what can you do when you run a node? Number one, you can connect your wallets to it. So if you're running Sparrow Wallet or you're running some other software wallet, you can take your wallet and say, hey, instead of looking at some other person's random copy of the blockchain, look at the one that I've downloaded and I'm hosting myself. That's where you're going to check for my balance. That's where you're going to check that all of the transactions I'm doing and am receiving are in line with the rules of the network. Nobody else is telling me that. Number two, you will no longer be leaking your transaction data to an potentially unknown third party. When you do a transaction and it routes through somebody else's node, they get to see, oh, somebody from this IP address sent a transaction for this amount, or somebody from this IP address asked about a balance. And so if somebody wanted to log that information, they could, and again, could begin painting a picture of somebody that owns a certain amount of Bitcoin. You can also protect yourself from anyone trying to change the rules of Bitcoin, like the 21 million cap. Basically, if you're running a node and you're pointing your wallets towards your own node, that economic activity is looking at that rule set. If somebody wants to change the rules of Bitcoin and say, well, there's going to be 42 million now, if you're looking at your own node and you're looking at those rules, you ignore what somebody else is trying to change. So it gives you a degree of self-direction and a degree of certainty that, hey, this is what I believe to be Bitcoin. These are the rules that I'm going by. And if you try to change them, nobody can force me to change the software on my node. And then on top of this, a lot of these devices that you could get now that are plug and play, you can run a ton of other great Bitcoin apps alongside them. So not just point to your copy of the blockchain, but you can host your own Lightning node and learn about channel management. You can host a copy of mempool.space that Jack had up here showing all of the data in the mempool. You can host things like Join Market for privacy. You can do a whole bunch of different things, and you can also host other self-sovereign applications. Your files, your passwords, your photos, Nostr clients, AI stuff. You can do all kinds of cool stuff that isn't just Bitcoin. Oh, and actually, really quick, I just want to point out some of the options out there. Number one, if you want to try for free, just download Bitcoin Core on your computer and then link Sparrow Wallet to it. You don't need to spend any money. But if you want all those additional applications and playing around, some of the options out there, I really enjoy Start9, and that's what I run, but some other awesome options out there. There's Umbrel, there's Minode, there's Ronin Dojo. Each one of those has kind of their own specialties and things that they excel at, and it's really going to be up to you what you prefer. All right, we're getting into the weeds, and we're rounding the corner towards the end here. Last thing, big thing I wanted to touch on is multi-sig. And so this is when you've gotten to a point, and a lot of you, I'm sure, are maybe to the point where you have a hardware wallet and you're securing your Bitcoin that way, but you've just seen your net worth kind of explode in this past calendar year, and maybe you're thinking like, holy crap, I've got one device and a written set of words, and that's all that stands between me and losing my sats forever. And what happens if somebody kicks in my door and threatens me with a $5 wrench? You might be faced with just giving them those 12 or 24 words and kiss goodbye to your life savings. So what are the potential solutions there? This is where you can make those $5 wrench attacks impossible. Multi-sig. You can think of this as a digital vault that requires multiple keys to open. And if you geographically distribute those multiple keys, then a $5 wrench attack is impossible. You are unable to divulge all the keys to a single attacker in a single location. If somebody wants the rest of them, they're going to be grabbing you, your one key, and go on a road trip. And criminals tend to like to smash and grab. It's usually not a lengthy operation, but nonetheless, there's many ways to set up a multi-sig. There are kind of user-friendly options, and then there's the more kind of self-sovereign options. Let's chat kind of the easy option at the expense of a degree of privacy depending on how you do it. And this would be like a collaborative multi-sig option or an assisted multi-sig option. The way this would work is maybe you have a digital vault with 3 keys and you require at least 2 keys to open the vault. You, as the individual, hold 2 of the keys, and a company holds the 3rd one. What this allows you to do is, at all times, you can unilaterally move your funds without the permission of that company. Furthermore, the company by themselves cannot move your funds at all because they only have 1 key. But if you screw up and you lose one of your keys, you then get to go to the company and say, hey, I'm going to need you to help me with that other key so that I can move my funds. And so it hedges against human error. It hedges against you screwing up. And in certain instances, it may hedge against something happening to you and your family not knowing what the hell is going on and losing a whole bunch of stuff. But if they retain 1 key and they have proof that they are next of kin, they could potentially go to that company and work it out so that they can get access to those funds again, while hedging against physical attack at the same time. Now, you can make a multi-sig on your own, of course. You can use something like Sparrow Wallet and spin up your own multi-sig. There's a lot of moving parts there. It's not for the faint of heart, I'll say. And I basically will say, if you're worried you're not going to be able to regain access, don't overcomplicate things. Keep it as simple as possible. You don't want to be so good at security that you lock yourself out. So I'll leave it there. So let's do a quick recap. This is you now, by the way, now that you've gotten through this presentation. But there are many ways to level up on the way to becoming a self-sovereign Bitcoiner. Number 1, you can obtain non-KYC coins. Number 2, you can hold your own keys. You can also secure Bitcoin with hardware. You can run a node. You can use CoinJoin and privacy tools. You can choose your payment wallets for day-to-day stuff. You can create circular Bitcoin economies, and you can use multisig to lock down coins for long-term savings and future generations. And this is the part where I hope you get your phones out and scan and save this playlist for your learning, because literally everything we've just discussed is in this video playlist. It is like 20-something videos long. Wherever you were, wherever I lost you, that's where you're starting. So sort through this playlist and start learning. I truly, truly hope that you guys take this opportunity not to just sit in a room and get excited about the why of Bitcoin, but actually take action. Be low time preference, learn and level up and use the tools so that you can be a self-sovereign Bitcoiner. The key takeaway here is one step at a time. Do not worry about being perfect. Just focus on improving. And thank you guys very much. Have a great rest of your time here, and you can reach me in these locations. Thank you, guys.